So technique number one is punch to the face. Some people might call this a high punch, an upper punch. Doesn't matter what you want to call it. In Japanese, we're going to call this a Jodan Zuki or upper level punch. The primary target you're going to be visualizing in your mind is going to be the upper lip or the nose. More advanced targets will involve the eyes and other places on the head, even places on the side of the head, the neck. All sorts of other targets become available. But for the beginner, visualize the upper lip or the nose for your upper level punches. Now they come from the hip down here. Now notice we're chambering down by the hip. Now some karate styles want to chamber up here. This one we're going to chamber down here. We do chamber here, we do chamber here, and we chamber here. We're going to practice primarily from this chamber here because of the grappling application involved with this here. There's grappling applications involved with chamber up here as well, but there are grappling applications that are more specific or a greater abundance of grappling techniques from this chamber here. So anyhow, ignoring my stance now, when you do these, you can practice from whatever stance you want to. It's just in the video, I'm doing a Shikodachi. This one, I'm just going to do a standard shoulder stance here. So when we start from here, the very first one, we're going to come up here. Now I want you to take a notice of my fist right here. See, my fist is at an angle. I'm not turned all the way over. There's a slight angle to my fist right there whenever I throw my punches. Modern karate likes to turn all the way over like this. Old style karate, slight turn right here. This has to do with how the shoulder is set up for impact with a target. Now, when the punch comes in, and these details apply to the next two techniques. So technically we're covering everything for parts 1, 2, and 3, or techniques 1, 2, and 3. So whenever I go through and throw my punch to the head, I'm going to come up. It's going to come up. Notice my palm is face up until I get to about right here, and then at the very end it turns over. Technically, this is the point where I'm making contact with the target, and then it turns over as I penetrate into the target. That's the idea behind it. And like I said, going to the middle, same exact thing. No difference, just the level you're going to. So for your Jodan Zuki, or your upper level or high punch, target is here or here. For your Chudan Zuki, or middle level punch, or mid-level punch, whatever you want to call it, primary target is the solar plexus. In some instances, it's the middle of the sternum, but that usually involves weaponry when you're going for the middle of the sternum. Without weaponry, target the solar plexus. For the Geidan Zuki, or the low-level punch, you're going to be hitting the bladder region. It's about right where the belt knot is. You're going to be hitting the bladder region as your primary target. I mean, you could target the testicles as well, but the bladder region is the primary target. So the next one is a spear hand, or nukite. And this goes to the middle section right here. Now this is just for practice. And the use of a spear hand, you're typically not going to be trying to spear right into the body right here. Now maybe after years of conditioning, you can do that. But there's secrets to the spear hand that'll get revealed much further along in your training. For now, you're practicing the idea of keeping these fingers tight. You don't want to do spear hand with the fingers all loose. You're practicing the idea of keeping these fingers tight while you're executing the spear hand. And you notice we're still down here at the hip, but we're chambered this way. So the palm is facing the body in the chamber for this one. And it's going to fire out from here and just straight out. Now, we're going to start from here like this. It's just like such right there. Again, it's hard to tell the camera angle here, but if you see I turn around here, it's coming right up from my solar plexus right here. See, it's right in the same level. But because of camera angles, this is why learning online can be difficult. The camera angle when I'm looking at the front makes it look like it's higher than it actually is. But anyhow, the focus is the fingertips here. Now, since you're not hitting targets in the orientation, you're just practicing the proper techniques, you want to practice keeping these fingers tight as you do this. Now, advanced students, you could actually throw a little cock in the wrist with the fingers there, but don't like over cock down like that. That's too much. Just a little movement of the wrist as you hit into the target there. All right, the next thing is the palm heel strike into the face. You could be coming into the chin or anything like that. Nose, eye, no, whatever, side of the head. But we're probably going to concentrate on the chin area right here. You'll notice that this time the palm is chambered down. So it's still at the hip level, but we're chambered with the palm facing down towards the floor. And as it comes forward, it's going to lift. See, my shoulder's lifting like this, lifting up. And then when I get to here, then the elbow straightens out as I extend it into the target. So you don't want to be like extending here and then raise it up. You need to get that part up first. Then after that's up, then it extends into the target. Now this gets into a whole bunch of other techniques. After you hit, you could end up clawing the eyes, a whole bunch of other techniques that can happen that will get revealed much later on in your training. One thing to notice these are hard weapons. So fingertips are hard weapons. This is actually a soft weapon. Whenever you're using hard weapons, you want hard weapons to hit soft targets. Soft weapons are for hitting hard targets. So just keep that in mind. General rule of thumb, because sometimes we violate the rules, but general rule of thumb, soft weapons to hard targets, hard weapons to soft targets. When practicing, you want to use different stances. If I'm in a stance where my feet are right across from each other, a natural shoulder stance, come out to a horse stance, or whatever, my hips are going to be working a certain way when I'm doing these techniques. If I'm in some sort of stance where one foot's forward, one foot's back, my hips will be set up slightly differently. You'll notice like when I throw a technique off of the lead, I'm going to end up with a slightly different hip structure than if I throw off of the rear, because the way the things are going to twist into or against each other and so forth. So you want to practice using different sorts of stances. You might want to practice from a cat stance. You might want to practice from a crane stance. Practice from all sorts of different stances while you're doing your training here. When you're evaluated, we're concerned about the techniques themselves. Now, there are stances required for the orientation, but we'll get into those later. During your training, I want you to mix up the stances. Hold all sorts of different stances. We're not too terribly concerned about transitions yet. We want you building strength into the stances by holding different stances while you're training. The other thing is about the number of techniques. So here, when we go through this, you saw me, I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, the objective is not to go through and do it that way. You can if you want. If you really, really, really wanted to, you could. Preferably what we'd like you to do, okay, we're going to do this first one here. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're going through and executing each and every single one of those techniques 10 times, 20 times, 50 times, 100 times. It's up to you how many you want to do. We're concerned about proper technique. Now, we also want to train in different modes. So for a beginner, what I really want you doing is slow. So in other words, when you're doing that first technique there, you're coming out here and you're going, nice and slow. I don't care about popping of the gi or anything like that. I'd rather see you doing these techniques nice and slow. Then, once you get good at going slow, then I'd like you to put some isometric tension into it. So in other words, when you're throwing the technique here, you're going to tighten the muscles and just slight tension. You're not going to go as hard as you can. Slight tension. My O-sensei, Eizo Shimabuko, used to say, do not exceed 60% tension when doing tension work. So follow that same rule of thumb. Don't exceed 60%. 50% is fine because that's not exceeding 60%. 30% is fine because that's not exceeding 60%. After you get good at going slow and with tension, that's when we'll start looking at the pop. You get the pop into it. Once you get the pop into it, then we're going to start looking at all the body dynamics, such as hip rotation. So you see my hip rotates like that, and that's how I get the good pop going there, because the whole body goes into the technique. But after you get the basics down, the basic motions down, we'll start exploring the kinetic chain at the end of your orientation.